Headline edition.
Like, man, here's the deal, okay? The world's coming to an end, okay? I don't know how to say this. There's this guy. He's been blowing my mind lately, okay? I don't know if you've heard of him or his show, but it's I mean, the things this guy announced. I mean, it's spooky. So yeah, I don't know if you've heard of his show. It's called The Program. And it's from the unimaginable mind of writer and comedian Jacob Hayes. Okay, this guy grew up acting. He's a real on-ball, interesting character. But I would definitely check out his patreon.com/Jacob Hayes, because this guy needs help. And it's not the kind of thing that, it's not the thing that they could fix, I mean, this is the kind of madness that it might be schizophrenia, it might be genius. The doctors are still studying him, but this guy needs financial help because we all do, because it's tough out there. I mean, it's Hollywood's dying, and so be sure to check out his Patreon, help subscribe, do the $1,000 tier. Fuck it, I mean, life's short, YOLO. But this guy creates really cool comedy and curiosity videos. Okay, I mean, sometimes it's late at night and you want to, you're getting stoned. You look out the window, or you're going for a walk, walking your dog, whatever, and you want to listen to, kind of some kind of conspiracy podcast or whatever, that kind of helps you feel better about the UFOs you're seeing, and this is that kind of show, what I mean? But it's also funny because he also does jokes. He's a comedian. He does stand-up, So he does these comedy curiosity videos. He does original podcasts. I mean, this guy does jokes, stories, character. I mean, he's a certified, this guy's insane. I mean, he's absolute crazy, absolute madman, His bits, he sources paranormal videos from all over the web, really cool shit you don't see anywhere else, UFO videos, demons, aliens caught on camera, leprechauns. Well, the leprechaun video we're still debating. But this guy, I mean, it's good shit. He does ancient history, mythology, and folklore. Covers so much that you just so much shit, more than you can imagine. Okay, more than you have time to watch or to listen to. Okay, so if you like this kind of shit, you go check him out. Okay, he's a character actor. He's a writer. He's a storyteller. He's a joker. He's a comedian. He's a lot of things. Is he insane? Like I said, the doctors are still figuring that out. But definitely check his shit out because he's entertaining to watch, and that's really the only thing that matters. Okay, so patreon.com/Jacob Hayes. Follow him on YouTube at Elsewhere TV. Okay, that's his main channel, and at The Program 1984. That's the podcast. Okay, what you're listening to right here, and check out the website at elsewhere.media. That's the headquarters. Okay, check it out. Okay, you're not going to regret it. Okay, tell him Robert Downey Jr. sent you. Okay, make sure to subscribe to the podcast.
That's the name of the game.
Shake the dream, the fire inside of your phonograph. Battle with gas and give you room to breathe through inadequate mass. Everybody can front, let me see you pumping your fist. Give you up in the back, when you rockin' with this. Come on, keeping your speaker knocking, jumping, banging, bumping, blazing hot, calling all freaks. Calling all freaks now. Yo, calling all calling all freaks now. That's right.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago.
The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucers. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like. In Fort Worth, Texas, where the object was first sent, Brigadier General Roger Ramey says that it is being shipped by air to the AAF Research Center at Wright Field, Ohio. A few moments ago, I talked to officials at Wright Field, and they declared that they expect the so-called flying saucer to be delivered there, but that it hasn't arrived as yet. In the meantime, General Ramey describes the object as being of flimsy construction, almost like a box kite. He says that it was so battered that he was unable to determine whether it had a disc form, and he does not indicate its size. Ramey says that so far as can be determined, no one saw the object in the air, and he describes it as being made of some sort of tinfoil. Other Army officials say that further information indicates that the object had a diameter of about 20 to 25 feet, and that nothing in the apparent construction indicated any capacity for speed, and that there was no evidence of a power plant. The disc also appeared too flimsy to carry a man. Now, back to Taylor Grant in New York.
In France, like America, the flying saucer mystery makes headlines. A young Frenchman photographed this flying saucer, or is it, from a mountainside in central France. Military officials, suspecting that the object was a meteorological balloon, send one aloft and photograph it. But comparison shows a striking contrast, and puzzled officials wonder, what was it? In Washington, ghost-like objects dart across the radar screen at the CAA Traffic Control Center at National Airport for several hours, traveling more than 100 miles an hour. Air Force jet fighters spend several hours chasing the objects plotted on the radar scope. General Sanford, Air Force Intelligence Director, confirms that the objects are not secret American weapons and reiterates the Air Force's obligation to investigate.
In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
Welcome to the world of mystery, a world of strange sights and sounds, a world of unexplained mysteries and visitation from other planets. It is a world of ghosts, of monsters from outer space, of demons and sorcery, of monsters from the depths of the seas, of werewolves and satanic ceremonies, of despotic rulers and wars. In short, a world of contradictions, continual conflicts, and unexplained phenomena which scientists are only now beginning to unravel. In the vast reaches of space, the mysteries which have baffled the ages lie waiting to be explored. How long must man wait to learn the secrets of the universe? How long must man wait to understand the mysterious world about him? It is only in this century that man has begun to strip away the clouds of deception which surround the world of fantastic phenomena and unexplained mysteries now confronting man. For somewhere out in space is the key to this astounding mystery, the key to lost civilizations, to undersea kingdoms, to mythical monsters and haunted houses, to systems of astrological divination and biblical prognostication, to the thousands of unexplained incidents which have been recorded down through the years of man's history, both in fantastic legends and often in even more astounding true life stories. Come with us then on an astounding voyage through man's past and into man's often terrifying future. Do UFOs exist? Are we being visited by creatures from other planets? What about the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, reports of ghostly visitations and horrifying monsters, lost civilizations in the kingdom of Atlantis? Is there any truth at all to reports of invaders from outer space, of messages in the stars, of worlds far from Earth where civilizations exist which are very unlike our own? In the vast reaches of space, there are thousands of unexplained mysteries and phenomena which man still struggles to understand, and 1,000,001 secrets waiting to be uncovered. We still know so little about our own planet, and we are in the very dawn of the nuclear age. Recent incidents at nuclear power plants on our east coast indicate that man still has a long way to go before he can control the awesome forces of the atom. And in the world of outer space, man has only reached the moon and looks longingly out from its barren surface to the stars in the surrounding universe. Man may reach Mars by the end of the 1980s, but even that gigantic distance is but a small step in the amazing, ever-expanding universe we live in. Who is out there in the vast blackness of space? What do they want? Are they our friends or enemies? Will we be invaded by civilizations from outer space? Are reports of UFOs in our skies to be believed, or are they mostly hoaxes and the rest easily explained away as weather phenomena or refraction of light? We still know so little of the world about us. In the next 2 hours, we will take you with us on a journey beyond the stars in an effort to find out the truth behind the astounding reports which have baffled our best scientists for decades. Explore with us, then, the amazing world of mystery.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which, by chance or by design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that are to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. So began a science fiction bestseller published more than 75 years ago, H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds. It was written and read as harmless entertainment. Science fiction was just becoming popular. Fairy tales for adults. And yet that world of science fiction is all around us right now, less fictional with every passing day. The evidence is here. Our planet is indeed being visited by intelligences greater than man's. They travel in spaceships, in flying saucers.
People all around the world are seeing these craft. The Italians call them disci volanti, the French, soucoupe volant, the Russians, letayuschi targetki. In America, we call them UFOs. There are literally thousands of police and pilot reports of UFOs, and over 900 landing trace cases have been documented. Cases where soil chemistry has changed. Swirled circles that testify to tremendous centrifugal force where something massive landed. But what? The military spokesmen of the great powers are suspiciously silent. Only one thing is certain. No earthly power has built aircraft that execute right-angled turns at supersonic speeds. And such craft are consistently seen and photographed tracking our test planes and space vehicles.
Where do these alien craft come from? And what are their powers? And why are they visiting us? Are they perhaps reminding us that we are part of a vast cosmic connection, that we have links, even kinship, with worlds beyond Earth? Or are they, as more and more people believe, trying to tell us that the knowledge we need to survive, to grow, is right here on planet Earth, hidden in our science and in our past?
Our planet is in crisis, and some say all this has happened before, a long, long time ago, to that mysterious, fabled land, the lost continent of Atlantis. In the 4th century B.C., Plato, in his dialogues, vividly described an island continent beyond the Pillars of Hercules called Atlantis. Ancient Mesopotamian tablets refer to a land destroyed by the Great Flood. The Book of Genesis, the Koran, Mayan legends, the Epic of Gilgamesh, all speak of this once flourishing civilization, whose science, it is said, surpassed ours at the moment of its destruction. What became of Atlantis? According to the records of Egyptian priests, in one cataclysmic day and night, the entire continent sank into the depths of the ocean. Russian physicist Immanuel Velikovsky has suggested that Atlantis became the lost continent after a shift in the Earth's axis. Famous psychic Edgar Cayce believed that by misusing the powers of the mind and interrupting the evolution of the planet, Atlantis became the victim of its own perverted super science. And the people of Atlantis, what happened to them? Were they all destroyed? Or did some survive the Holocaust and migrate by sea and air to other lands? Did some Atlanteans retreat into the ocean and establish a magnificent undersea kingdom that still flourishes there today? Or did they, with their advanced technology, escape into outer space? And have they perhaps, since man first left records on cave walls, been returning in their spaceships to observe us as we build the new Atlantis? What evidence is there that man himself was not the sole architect of the Earth's great ancient structures? Did we indeed get a little help from our friends from space? The Great Pyramid of Giza is the height of a 40-story skyscraper. It's built with 2.25 million stone blocks, some weighing 24,000 pounds apiece. Blocks supposedly hauled hundreds of miles by slaves and beasts of burden. And what of the knowledge necessary for the construction of such a monument? We know now that the Great Pyramid was built facing true north in the exact center of the land map of the world. Not the known world of 2575 BC, but the entire world as we know it today. The only way its architects could have derived such calculations would have been to survey the Earth from high in the air, make a global map, project it flat, then draw meridians through the precise center of the map's land surface. Either that or the information was provided for them by someone else, someone capable of aerial reconnaissance. Some of the pyramids in Spanish America, land of the ancient Mayan, Aztec, and Toltec civilizations, predate even those of Egypt. Tiwanaku, the oldest city in South America, is said to have been constructed by a race of giants whose homeland was destroyed by a great flood. Archaeologists have discovered amazing similarities in architecture and artifacts in Egypt and at Tiwanaku. similarities which have led some scholars to suggest that these two civilizations might have a common source. That perhaps Egypt was the principal colony of Atlantis in the Old World, while Tiwanaku was one of the drowned continent's colonial outposts in the New. The sacred books and folklore of widely separated lands all tell of days when gods visited this planet wrapped in clouds or conveyed by fiery chariots. Are the gigantic statues on Easter Island faithful representations of ancient astronauts or Atlantean giants? And what of Stonehenge, Neolithic computer of the Druids? The parallel is not far-fetched, for it would take an IBM computer to decipher the functions of this calendar monument, to predict coming eclipses from the complex alignment of the massive stone slabs, each marking a position of the sun and the moon. And more astonishing, the inner measurements of Stonehenge in England and the dimensions of the Great Pyramid in Egypt both indicate the precise number of days in a solar year, which seems to suggest that the architects of these distant structures had access to the same information, perhaps even worked from a master set of blueprints. The question is, why? Imagine, if you will, a single team of architects traveling from continent to continent, employing local people to construct navigational aids, great beacons that could be seen from craft orbiting planet Earth. Beacons still operational today. Certainly the most permanent evidence that advanced civilizations have been visiting this planet since ancient times may be seen in these time-defying monuments, a world apart. But let us consider what is happening in our skies today.
It was exactly 8:05 p.m. when Air Defense Command received word that a mysterious light was hovering low on the horizon just northeast of Rapid City, South Dakota. Radar operators at Ellsworth Air Force Base shifted their attention to the northeast quadrant of the sky and immediately picked up an unidentified target. Air Traffic Control quickly contacted an F-84 patrolling in the west, asked for an interception, and vectored the jet toward the UFO. A moment later, the jet's radar picked up the unidentified return and locked on. The plane was just 3 miles from its target when the light suddenly moved away with a fantastic burst of speed. The pursuit lasted for 120 miles, but the jet could not gain on the object. Finally, the pilot abandoned the chase. At ground control, the fascinated radar men watched the unknown object change direction and trailed the jet back to the airfield.
The evidence is overwhelming. The planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial vehicles. In other words, some UFOs are somebody else's spacecraft. There are no good arguments against UFO reality if we consult the evidence.
Stanton T. Friedman, nuclear physicist and lecturer, has been consulting the evidence on UFOs for over 15 years.
One of the most extraordinary cases he has studied recently was that of Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, two shipyard workers from Pascagoula, Mississippi, who claimed that while fishing on the bank of the Pascagoula River, a strange craft emitting a bluish light descended and hovered just above the oyster flat 30 feet away from them. Hickson later described how 3 silvery creatures floated out of the craft, grabbed him, and floated him aboard.
There was some kind of zipping sound, and when I turned around in this area out here, about 40 or 50 feet out there, there was some kind of craft, you know. It looked like it's going to come right onto the ground. But it came on down and hovered about a foot and a half or 2 feet off of the ground. But we didn't know what to do, you know. The river behind us and that out there, not knowing what it was. So, and then before we had time to really do anything, it seemed like an opening appeared. Toward the end, it was, you know, toward us. And the blue light, it had blue flashing lights as it was, you know, approaching the ground, but then they went out. And when the opening appeared, some source of light came from the inside. It was just almost blinding.
Some UFO reports are hard even for governments to dismiss, especially when there are photographs to support the witnesses.
At approximately 15 minutes to 10 Monday evening, several citizens from the East Los Angeles area phoned our station and stated that they were observing what they thought was an unidentified flying object. After receiving several of these phone calls, Officer Weinkoop and I were dispatched into the East Los Angeles area to investigate these possible sightings. We observed the object traveling in a southwesterly direction and gave pursuit of the object. While in pursuit, I was passenger officer and I was broadcasting a pursuit to my division watch commander, Sergeant Tigroin of Hollenbeck Division, LAPD. During the pursuit, I managed to take one photograph. This photograph negative was booked into police property using this report and this divisional record number.
The spacecraft was oval shape on top and underneath, like a large pancake blown up in the middle. It did not have any dome like many of them have reported to have had. And it seemed to be about 200 feet in diameter and about 30 feet high.
One of the best photographic sequences on record was taken of a UFO over Trindade Island off the coast of Brazil. Military and civilian observers on the Brazilian training ship Almirante Saldanha saw this metallic craft nearly 150 feet long moving in over the sea to circle the island. A professional photographer aboard the ship grabbed his camera and took these photographs, which were officially released to the world by Juscelino Kubitschek, then president of Brazil, as authentic UFO pictures. Evidence of UFO activity over water mounts steadily. Jacques Cousteau has reportedly investigated UFO sightings over South America's Lake Titicaca. Thor Heyerdahl saw strange, glowing masses underwater during his famous Kon-Tiki voyage. And there are literally hundreds of reports from marine scientists and ship's crews of mysterious undersea craft. What is the connection between UFOs and water? Are extraterrestrials using the oceans of our world as highly developed bases for successive space expeditions? Or are these craft, as some people believe, piloted by descendants of Atlantean survivors who sought refuge long ago under the sea? What evidence is there to support this speculation? We now have the means to explore our ocean floors, and divers have located vast stretches of what appear to be the paving stones of giants. Stones as huge as the blocks that built the pyramids, crisscrossing the ocean bed in mid-Atlantic. Archaeologists have found the walkways and pillars of an ancient sunken temple off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas. Are these undersea structures traces of one of the cities of Atlantis? Consider the mysterious triangle-shaped area in the Caribbean Sea that extends from the edge of the Gulf Stream about 150 miles east of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to 40 degrees west latitude in the mid-Atlantic. Known in olden times as the Sargasso Sea, this area is a graveyard of the unexplained. It's a place where strange things happen to compasses. Strange things happen to time. Down through the centuries, this watery graveyard has claimed Spanish galleons, windjammers, steamships, supertankers, pleasure yachts, and aircraft. Almost all disappeared without trace, as if the tentacles of some mythical monster had reached out and seized them. This area is known today as the Bermuda Triangle, or Devil's Triangle.
On December 5th, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers under the command of Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor took off from Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station on a routine navigational mission. Surface winds of 20 knots, skies clear, visibility unlimited. Suddenly, just 15 minutes before the flight was due to land, Fort Lauderdale Tower picked up Lieutenant Taylor's frantic voice. The time, 4 p.m.
Calling the tower. This is an emergency. We seem to be off course. We cannot see land. Repeat, we cannot see land.
What is your position?
We're not sure of our position. We can't be sure just where we are. We seem to be lost.
Assume bearing due west.
Well, we don't know which way is west. Everything is wrong. We can't be sure of any direction. Looks like we're entering white water now. I tell you, we're completely lost.
Then, at 4:25 p.m.,
we're completely lost. And then, silence. Forever. Immediately, the Navy dispatched a Martin PBM Mariner flying boat, a huge craft with electronic tracking gear, with enough fuel to remain airborne for 24 hours. Aboard, a crew of 13. By 7:04 p.m., the Mariner 2 was missing. In 3 short hours, the Triangle had literally swallowed up 6 planes and 27 trained men. By dawn the following day, the greatest air-sea rescue search ever launched was underway. 242 aircraft and 18 ships scoured the area known as the Devil's Triangle, but not a trace was found. Not an oil slick, not a piece of wreckage, not a life raft. Nothing.
There's no comprehensive list of Triangle victims, but the litany of lost ships alone reads like a guest list from Davy Jones's locker. United States ship Nina, United States ship Grampus, the steamship Santa Clara, Star Ariel, the Home Sweet Home, the steamships Hewitt, Corner, Slocum, the Marine Sulphur Queen, the Southern District, the City Belle, the George Boston, the Raifuku Maru, and on and on and on. Ship names that descend from mythology, the steamship Rubicon, the Nereus, the Proteus, the Cyclops, the Constellation, the steamship Witchcraft. Theories about the Triangle range from piracy to tunnels into other dimensions, other time zones. Physicists have suggested that the lost ships and planes may have been victims of a magnetic phenomenon that disrupts radio communications, causes flight instruments to malfunction, but there is no conclusive explanation. The ominous question remains. Is this area controlled by some unknown intelligence?
We are currently spending millions of dollars exploring the ocean's bed. Project Moho drilled 600-foot shafts beneath 12,000 feet of water in an attempt to decode the mysteries of the Earth's crust. And along with archaeologists and oceanographers, parapsychologists are joining in the search to locate evidence of the legendary lost continent of Atlantis. Myths from every country tell of gods and mermaids rising up out of the ocean. What if mythology is really condensed history, and the tales of these enchanted sea creatures are in fact eyewitness reports? What if the whale that snatched Jonah from the raging sea was actually an underwater craft? Undersea colonization may be a reality within our lifetime. Oceanographic institutes like Woods Hole and Scripps are collaborating with the government in undersea lab experiments to prove that man can live comfortably in an aquatic environment for extended periods of time.
In order to survive under the sea and in deep space, man is developing new tools, mind tools, telepathy, clairvoyance, psychokinesis. The young Israeli psychic Uri Geller, who's puzzled scientists with his ability to bend metal with his mind and to dematerialize objects, claims that the power to do this is channeled through him from an extraterrestrial intelligence. Well, if Geller is right, we all have a lot of new thinking to do. Meanwhile, the governments of both Russia and America are quietly sponsoring psychic research. Both countries have seriously considered using telepathy, the direct transference of thought from one mind to another, as a means of communicating with submarines and spaceships. Another country where ESP research is being carried out with the utmost objectivity is Czechoslovakia.
Here in a Czech laboratory, we are watching an experiment in telepathy. The subject is being placed in a deep hypnotic trance in order to free the unconscious to receive the message which will be relayed to him. First, the subject is placed in a deep hypnotic trance.
Hlubokým spánkem, spíte nejhlubším spánkem.
In this experiment, it is essential that there be no outside interference, that the subject's mind be clear to receive the mental message that will be flashed to him. Now the experimenter, previously unknown to the sleeping subject, selects at random an envelope which contains the name of a spice, pepper. He tastes it, and then mentally tries to convey the actual taste of the spice to the hypnotized subject. Now the scientist is saying to him, "What I taste, you also will taste. What is it?" And the reply comes almost immediately, pepper. Psychokinesis, the ability to move physical objects with the force of the mind, is also a subject of intense interest to science and to the military. Here in Leningrad, under strictest test conditions, talented, sensitive Nina Kulagina makes the magnetic needle of a compass rotate by sheer mind energy. Russian scientists have found that while demonstrating this ability, the magnetic field surrounding Madame Kulagina's body is only 10 times less powerful than that of the Earth itself. Using this same energy, Madame Kulagina can also make non-magnetic objects like these matchsticks, shielded under glass, creep toward her across the table.
In this area of the Gobi, I believe we will find the origins of the Garden of Paradise, or the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, as it is referred to in our book of Genesis.
One less-known expedition was led to a mountain in an African desert, since there were stories by the local tribes that there existed a network of caves out of which flying objects emerged, which had also been cited by the German expeditioners. Under the cover name Wielandschmiede, all the information about the technology of the inhabitants of the inner Earth or extraterrestrials was gathered, and through the SSE-4 was passed on to the engineers of the weapon industry in order to develop the new technology. The flying saucers from Agartha were the result of this scientific research. The Nazis made contact with the extraterrestrials of the underground city of Antarctica. They received technical support and instruction for building flying saucers with levitation drives, similar to those used on Venus. At the end of the Second World War, the extraterrestrials ensured that the technology was returned from Earth back to these cities. They understood that the Dark Age had not yet reached its peak. The technology was returned by 30 submarines through a large commando action.
Okay, let's pick up the scenario. We were originally talking about the spiriting out of the two spacecraft out of Berlin before the Allies arrived. We said that they were put aboard two submarines. They spent 6 months at sea, and they finally landed in Argentina. Now, from that point, they were taken into Antarctica, into a section of Antarctica called Queen's Maud's Land. And there they disappeared, and they were not heard of for some time. Now, intelligence sources, and of course I was in the intelligence business at that time with the agency, reports indicated that they were in there and they were operative once again. Now, there was a major concern by world powers to go in and capture the technology and the two spacecraft which they knew were in Antarctica. And the intelligence reports indicated that one known as Admiral Byrd was to be recommissioned, and he was to be sent in there to retrieve the two saucers and also the technology and personnel associated with it. Later reports indicated that Admiral Byrd was given 8 months and unlimited funding to go in and pull this thing successfully off. But we also know that within 8 weeks he was totally defeated. Now, the supposition at that point was that there was an advanced civilization and technology, most probably alien. There were with the Third Reich and the SS who was in Antarctica, and that those great and developed technologies were used to defeat Admiral Byrd. And of course, as it turns out, even to date, they're still there. We never did successfully get them.
The stories that I've uncovered about the inner Earth is that very early on in the history of the Third Reich, the Nazi elite, and especially Hitler, were trying to establish contact with a civilization living in the inner Earth, which was considered an Aryan civilization of a lot more advanced nature than their brothers, lost brothers living on the surface of the planet. The Thule Society carries the name of the former capital of that civilization, someplace around present-day Greenland, before the previous polar shifts and before Greenland became under ice. Two expeditions were made in the late 30s, early 40s, one attempting to enter the North Polar water opening with a submarine, which proved unsuccessful. A second attempt was made to enter the land opening on the South Pole with an anti-gravity cigar-shaped device, basically a small prototype probably of the giant Andromeda space station that was developed later on by the SS, and it proved successful. The most interesting story is the one that I heard by an American living in Florida who claims to have spent 2 months in the city of New Berlin. This is a city that was developed into the inner Earth, and a part of the Germans from the South Polar colony were admitted by the inner Earthlings and were allowed to build that city there. Very strict admission procedures, no previous SS members, no previous concentration camp guards and so on were admitted. The rumor is that the present-day city of New Berlin is about 2 million people of population, that they have built there most of the buildings that Hitler's personal architect, Spee, was planning to build. They're traveling on Icelandic passports. They are basically the new master race that is probably planned by the Illuminati to repopulate the planet. And there is even a rumor that there is a New Berlin embassy in Washington on an unmarked floor of a high-rise building. You probably punch a code on the elevator buttons, and when the elevator stops on that floor and the doors open, you see the sign of New Berlin in the lobby. The kids of the New Berliners study in major institutions around the globe. Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Yale. And basically, it is not a Nazi colony that is established in the hollow earth as an enemy of the present-day American and English Illuminati secret government. On the contrary, it is just basically the other side of the same coin. Some would even coin the new word, the Illuminati presence on the planet, that basically the World War II Nazis and the present-day Illuminatis in America are nothing more than the two sides of the same Illuminati coin. So basically, this is a colony, a presence in the hollow earth that has been established with a shoulder-to-shoulder cooperation of the Russians and Americans, organized, orchestrated, and performed through the quiet cooperation of the Illuminati government.
After World War II, a military expedition under Admiral Byrd tried to recover the vanished technology. The extraterrestrials let him enter the inner earth to the Golden City. They delivered a request message for disarmament to the government of the United States. Admiral Byrd had to remain silent until his death, but after he died, his nephew published his diary.
In my work with South African, Brazilian, and American geologists at the South Pole, it is clear that under the structures of ice, there are many layers of civilization, suggesting at one earlier point of time when the conditions of the South Pole were different. Clearly, there was some type of civilization there. The evidences of huge dinosaur intelligence suggest that this was one of the possible places for the Garden of Eden. This, of course, is assuming that the shell of the Earth had a different north and south magnetic pole. And with the shifting of the pole, this region became suddenly very, very frigid. And thus, we do not see any evidences on the surface of these so-called earlier conditions of intelligence. However, I believe with the further exploration of the documents that both Admiral Byrd brought to the attention of the world after World War II, and the Brazilian Navy uncovered in 1961 with its subpole expedition, that extraterrestrial intelligence is also operated out of the area of the South Pole. In that sense, the South Pole is a connecting point with other civilizations, possible extrasolar gardens of paradise.
What was it that Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole? Incredibly enough, in an official American Navy documentary film, we found footage of what Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole. He found giant freshwater, never freezing lakes with areas around them that were free of any snow. And in that film, we show footage of the Navy planes landing in these lakes. But even more so, he found, to his amazement, that his planes were disappearing very quickly. A lot of his planes were attacked by anti-gravity devices that were operated by the Germans there, by anti-gravity saucers. A lot of them crashed into invisible barriers and disintegrated in mid-flight. This is an indication that the Germans had already perfected the force field shields, and they were up and operational around the German colony at Neuschwabenland. When he was retreating, basically the whole operation lasted for 1 week. They started at the end of February 47, and by the first week of March, they were through with the whole operation, and much, much earlier than scheduled, and they departed. And in an interview at Buenos Aires on his way back, Admiral Byrd made the incredible statement that the Third World War would probably be with an adversary coming from the polar regions of our planet, an adversary that has the ability to fly unobstructed from pole to pole. He was referring to the Germans at their South Polar colony at Neuschwabenland that were operating their anti-gravity craft with impunity and could fly circles around the globe, and of course would shoot out of the sky any of the attacking American planes.
The inner terrestrials surrounded the entrance gates with an electromagnetic protective dome which no being or weapon can penetrate. After all this happened, it became the greatest secret of mankind. It started ufology as we know it today. Indeed, there is a second humanity, an inner terrestrial race who had already built cities in the inner earth before the sinking of Atlantis. These extra and inner terrestrial races built time gates and anchored these cities on a higher subatomic frequency. After the great purification, these time gates will fall, and at different places there will be once again access to the underground cities.
In 1961, the Brazilian Navy was conducting a series of experiments in the Antarctic. According to one of my colleagues who was in one of the naval ships, suddenly out of the ice packs, a large spacecraft emerges and takes off vertically at a terrific speed, shocking both the American and the Brazilian naval forces that were there. So it is clear that as late as 1961, we have official documentation from the Brazilian Navy that there is some other, emphasize other, underline this 3 or 4 times, life force or intelligence stationed at the South Pole, possibly to observe the scientific developments on the planet, possibly to observe the military operations and the forces of the East and the West in some type of Mexican standoff as the Cold War develops. We have clear documentation from other sources and other South American governments that some technology that is not human-based is there. That is to say, some type of higher evolutionary experience is there, and this is the next chapter of our quest.